Hello, folks. Today I feel anointed to speak to us about human resource, just some random thoughts. And one of these things is I know that at some point you've hired people, or some of us, we hire people all the time. And one of the things that we are supposed to do the moment you zero in on those candidates that you want to hire is to move an extra mile and do reference checks, right? These are some of the things that we do all the time, or some of the things that are recommended that we do as hiring managers or as leaders, right? So when you're doing reference checks, my advice is that please take this as a serious process, as a serious exercise, because there's a lot of information we gather by just speaking to referees. And I know sometimes we speak to the referees that the candidates have given us, those referees that they list in their CVs. But sometimes also we advise that please go an extra mile and speak to the people behind the scenes. Do not rely only on the people that the candidates have given you. Because sometimes they pick those candidates, they feel like these are the people who will give good information or good story about me. But if you want to understand more, please go an extra mile. Speak to other people in the organizations where this person has worked so that you can dig deeper. And by doing that, you'll be surprised that there is a lot of information that you get about this person, either technically how this person has worked or even how this person used to relate with other people. Generally, you want to understand who this person is, beyond the technical competencies and the things that this person has said in their CV and in your conversations during interviews. You also want to understand who this person is, because at the end of the day, is the person you employ, right? You really want to understand who this person is. And part of that is speaking to the referees that you have, or the referees that you want to speak to understand. And one thing I like a lot is the fact that sometimes when I talk to referees, I also want to understand the relationship between this referee and the candidate, right? Because ideally you want to speak to the people who have worked with this candidate on day-to-day basis. You don't want to speak to people who work with them for once a month or once a week, or people that they normally see each other on corridors, right? You want to have people, to speak to people who have some experience working on these people on day-to-day basis, because those are the people who have authority to speak more about this candidate. They work together so they understand them better, all right? So I like the idea of asking the referee, what is your relationship with this candidate? Because I want to understand how they used to work together. And if I get a sense that this referee didn't work with this candidate closely, then, I'm comfortable to ask the referee, like, hey, do you have somebody who worked with this person very closely that I can speak to? Because I don't want to spend 15, 20 minutes speaking to this person. And maybe at the end of the day, I'll not get the information that I want, all right? So I really want to be sure that I'm speaking to the right person that will give me the information that I want, okay? And the other thing I've discovered is that as you do reference checks, if you find some red flags, please treat them seriously. Sometimes you speak to, let's say, 4 referees, and 3 referees said really beautiful, great things about this candidate. But you felt that there is something that the 4th referee said which kind of isn't so positive about this candidate. So please take that negative very seriously, even if it was a small thing. From my experience, I think that small red flag means a lot. So do not risk, if there is that small red flag that one of the referees spoke about, take that seriously. And for me, if there is a slight red flag, definitely I'm not going to hire, unless I'm completely convinced that it wasn't a significant red flag, all right? So that is one thing that I wanted to speak to us today about human resource. The other thing is that sometimes when we hire people, usually we get them on probation. And in Kenya, I know we get people in 6 months probation. I don't know your organization, but I know most organizations in Kenya, they get people through a 6 months probation. Sometimes when it's not successful, you increase the probation period. It's allowed within the law. But one thing I've seen is that if I'm working with a candidate, and this would be my proposal to you, if you're working with a candidate, you've hired somebody that you think this person is great, one of the things that you can do to set this person up for success is to ensure that this person has a good onboarding experience and that this person is really getting feedback from you about how they're doing within their probation period, all right? You want them to understand how they're doing. So what you need to do is you set up like monthly meetings, for example, and those monthly meetings is just to review the probation so that you are able to give them feedback as their supervisor, all right? So that they are able to know how they're performing within their probation period. I mean, you really don't want somebody great that you hired to get to some point when they are done with their probation. And that's the time when they're getting this news that it wasn't successful, all right? And they never knew about this. You never give them feedback, all right? And this is a person you are sitting close to every day. You never give them feedback on how they're performing, all right? So as a great leader, you need to ensure that you're giving these people feedback on their performance, because part of what you're doing is actually setting them up for success. You want to be sure that they are on a platform, they are supported to navigate through, because there's a lot that happens when people are new and they're trying to navigate through the organization and how things work within the organization. So if you don't assess and give them feedback on how they're performing, then likely they might miss things. And one of the things that you don't want to do as a leader is you don't want people to be done with their probation. And then when they're done, now when 6 months are over, that's when you're giving them feedback like, hey, you're not successful because of X, Y, Z. All right, that's really not good. It simply points to leadership flaws. That's how I look at it, all right? So the thing is that please give them feedback on constant basis when they're on probation, all right? And that way you are setting them up for success once their probation period is over, okay? Okay, good. And then the other thing I've learned is that if you've worked with this person through this journey for those 6 months, or if there's an additional period of time within those probation period, and then you feel like this person hasn't improved over those 6 months, my rule is, if I'm not comfortable that you've navigated through some of these things, you've really demonstrated that you're capable, and I've given you all the support that you needed, the teams have given you all the support that you needed, I'll weigh whether I need to increase the probation period. Okay? So for example, if I feel like there were like 5 areas that you needed to improve, and I've given you feedback every single month on some of these things, but after 6 months I've not seen improvement, or I've not seen any significant improvement, then chances are not increase your probation period. That's it, right? Because the other challenge is that you increase this person probation period to another 6 months, for example, because again, that is allowed in law. But then after those 6 months plus 6 months, 1 year, the person hasn't improved, then you get to a point where you have to tell this person like, hey, your probation was not successful. At some point, you have to tell this person that, all right? Because if it was not successful, then it wasn't successful. That's the truth, yeah? So if you feel like truly this person isn't improving, then you need to make that call to either tell this person that your probation isn't successful at the end of 6 months, or if you want to increase that period of time, then you need to be sure that if I increase the probation period by another 3 months or 6 months, I'm sure because I've seen progress, all right? I've seen progress with this person, then I'm sure that this person will have covered that distance, and I'm comfortable that this person will have sailed through, okay? But otherwise, you need to come to a point where you have to say it's not working, and you make a decision at that point. The other thing is that sometimes as hiring managers and as people who have responsibility of hiring people, we get to that point where we feel deep inside ourselves, we feel like these people actually are not cut for this role. They are not hacking it. Even with all that period of time and the support that you've given them, they are not really improving. But then because we made a decision to hire these people, we are afraid. You know, we are held back because we don't want to be seen like we made a mistake, all right? But here's the truth. Please, as a leader, if you feel like the person you hired isn't the right fit for the job, kindly just ensure that you gather that courage. It's part of leadership to give people that feedback and to say, I'm really sorry, it hasn't worked, all right? And it's just so simple. Just let them know that it didn't work. I know some people might be, like I said, some people might be afraid because you really don't want to be seen like you made a wrong decision. So you want to cover up people even if you know that they've not done well within the probation period. But at the end of the day, you are the one who live with that pain. All right. If you are this person's supervisor and you've decided to keep this person after the probation period, then you know that you're going to live with that pain for the longest period of time, right? And I'm not saying that people cannot improve post-probation. All I'm saying is that the probation period is designed in a way that we are able to test for the person's competence within the role that we hire them for. That's the period when we are supposed to test for culture fit. And therefore, we are supposed to ensure that we achieve exactly that, okay? And if it's not working, you need to be to speak it out so that you make a decision which is right. Okay, because again, after the probation period has ended, you relinquish the right to say anything else. Because at the end of the day, if you come and point out the performance issues against this person, and in fact other people around you say, did you see these things during the probation period? Okay. Why is it that it's coming out now? Okay. Maybe it's not right. It's not correct. People always bring stories because the fact is that people went through that probation period and you never spoke about it. Okay. So that's one thing I wanted to bring out to us, just so that you know around that. And then if for the probation period, because I've seen this in some cases, if you are to let the person go and just ensure that you have paperwork, all those discussions that we've been having, improvement areas, whatever it is, areas of where this person is lacking, whatever it is that you're noting, those conversations that you have during review meetings, please ensure that they're documented. Sometimes we design a document where a person has to sign that, yes, this conversation took place. These are the areas that were mentioned by my supervisor. These are the areas I need to improve on. And then you sign as the supervisor and they sign, all right? And then like that, you keep a trail of documents. That's what I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, if you have to let this person go, it has to be solved. I think also it's fair that it's documented and I mean, the person can see. It's just fair to have it documented, all right? And also in the extreme case, when this thing becomes so big and it goes to court, you're also protected. Like you did make an arbitrary decision, which is not backed by any documentation or conversations that happened around that. And I know sometimes people say that, I know in law, it says that, you can fire people during probation. Like the law is really, it's not stringent on that. But just go and search for case laws, like the precedent that has been set. And you'll be surprised that actually the court looks at how the hearing went, whether this person got feedback on during probation, they understand the areas of that they needed to improve on. Was this discussed in an open, transparent manner? The court will look at that. So if you fire somebody that do not have documentation, even if this person was on probation, my friend, you are in for it. Believe you me, if this person goes to court and argues that they came for probation, they did all their best according to the work that was assigned to them, they performed according to their JD, and no one ever pointed out their inadequacies, the areas where they need to improve. No one spoke to them about that, and it's documented somewhere. If this person can argue that in a court of law successfully, then you're done. That's it, yeah? It happens even if it's in the Employment Act of 2007. So that's another thing I wanted to mention, so that so that you are aware of that. One thing I did mention about references is that for people who are handling sensitive positions, like for example finance people, we actually do more reference and background checks more than other people. Sometimes if you are checking references for 3 or 4 people, for other people in other positions, for people in finance and other sensitive positions, we talk to 6, even 8 people. All right. The reason for that is because we want to get as much information, as much background information as possible, because those are really like sensitive areas. So you just want to be sure that you are taking that extra step, extra effort to ensure that you're checking more, digging more on their background checks, right? Another thing I've noticed is that as a leader, if you have all these people, and especially, again, finance people, you need to keep checking on your finance people, how people are doing generally, all right? You need to have an eye on what people are doing, especially with finance or people handling money. And if you realize that your finance people are into gambling, maybe they're addicted to betting, you need to think about that and manage that as one of the risks that you need to manage within the business. All right? Because one of these days, those guys will run with your money. I've seen this twice now with my finance people. And actually, I feel like it's a challenge. Okay? If you have finance people who are into betting and gambling, then one of these days, these guys will gamble with your money. Either they run away or they'll just play games around until maybe that issue is unearthed either through probably internal process like internal audits or external audits, whatever it is. That's when you realize that, oh, we actually have money missing, okay? So if you have people within your finance teams who are into gambling, into betting, you need to actively manage that as a risk, and you need to address it as a serious matter, because, I mean, that's really like a serious risk to the business that you need to take notice of and manage as much as possible. And if necessary, take disciplinary actions on such matters. Cool. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much. I hope you learned something from this recording, and hopefully I'll share something next Sunday. Thank you.